would lean on the side of those most challenged, those at the low. One of the best breaststrokers the Caribbean has ever seen. He passed away yesterday. And Jerome Brammer, a former national swimmer, also of Fatima College, passed away in Washington about 6 days ago. So to the swimming fraternity and to Trinidad and Tobago as a whole, I want to express our deepest condolences to the family and friends of these national heroes. Madam Vice President, Senator the Honorable Dr. Marlene Atz, I congratulate you on your ascension to the board of ANSA McAL, and I hear it, and I'm glad that you disclosed that. But suffice it to say that the government under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, while respecting and understanding corporate Trinidad and Tobago and the importance for job creation, is a prime minister of the people, for the people, and by the people. So when she is weighing policy decisions, she would lean on the side of those most challenged, those at the lower ends of the economic ladder. So when you see the policies for extension of or increase in age limit for foreign use, that's to allow all the citizens to be able to afford transportation. And while some people may believe that that creates traffic because the roads are designed only for a certain economic bracket, I can assure you that this government understands the problems, will create innovative solutions to ease traffic and increase production. Also, the costs and the requisite taxes and that were put on duties on alcohol, everybody knows that's self-explanatory. The prices have been raised. And while, as Senator Dan Paul said, that's an inelastic demand, we also want to stress that the PNM was at great pains to complain about how much was always spent on health and the healthcare system and free healthcare, even suggesting that they wanted to privatize it and throw in innuendos. But healthy lifestyles are a part and parcel of this government to reduce the cost of NCDs and lower the budget, the bill for the health sector. So that is part and parcel of this policy. This budget must be commended. The Minister of Finance, guided by the Honorable Prime Minister, for the first time in 9.5 years, we saw a budget with a plan, with possibilities, with hope. We saw public servants and labor celebrating rather than being angry and vexed at being talked down to. We saw citizens happy to go to the gas station. And yes, $50 per tank may come up to $400, but it is a benefit across the board. And the multiplier effects will take place as transportation costs decrease and the government's agricultural plan and diversification takes our route as we move forward. So, Senator Atz, I also will implore you at your new position, seeing that you didn't mention that Guardian Media Limited falls under your auspices as a board member of ANSA McAL Group, that so maybe we could start to see a little bit more fair and balanced journalism from Guardian Media Limited, rather than reporters so full of venom and not understanding their journalistic principles, because you are a lady and a citizen who has lived extremely well and fairly and balanced, and I'm sure that you will not be part and parcel of encouraging any sort of Balizé juice from a Guardian Media Limited. So I look forward to them returning to their basics, back to basics, their journalistic principles. Ask hard questions, of course, but the absolute venom and political bias of the PNM could not be the way. That's why they also lose $14 million per year, which you would not want to oversee. Honorable Senator Lalit Etienne, don't worry, Honorable Senator. The guardrails have been put in place. The guardrails to protect the NIS and to protect the nation's treasury and to protect the country have been put in place. They were put in place. They were put in place on April 28, 2025 in a landslide victory, removing the issues and the problems that you may have had with the NIS that this government agrees with, that citizens had been contributing. But that PNM blight, that PNM government has ruled us for 76.2% of our existence. And when you ask them where the money gone, you are correct, because they had people like Calder Hart and Andre Montai in charge of our money, and we don't know where it went. But this government has to bail the cat. This government cannot allow, by 2033, the entire system to collapse, because then everybody who had contributed would lose. Every single citizen, every single worker would lose. So the Honorable Minister of Finance and the direction of the Minister of Planning and the Prime Minister has decided that they will bite the bullet and protect the future for all of our citizens, and it's worthy of a pounding of the table. And I assure you, as you say that you would contribute and you hope to be alive at 2033, and I wish that you are, Godspeed, but in 2033, the NIS will be alive and kicking, because the guardrail is there and the PNM shall never return to government in this country. Senator Lalit Etienne, there is no herding of any special needs or differently abled people into any one area. I'm not sure where you got that from. Edinburgh 500, the bottom floors, as well as all HDC developments across Trinidad and Tobago, are going to be made available in certain percentages for differently abled people. So there is no herding of anyone anywhere. That's just an opportunity for those who are most in need to access housing. Plus, Edinburgh 500, while all over Trinidad and Tobago became a hotspot under the PNM and nowhere was safe, whether Goodwood Park, Lange Park, Gulf View, murders happened everywhere. The current Prime Minister and the Ministers of National Security here are dealing with that situation, and the murder rate has come down 42%. My learned colleague, my young Senator Rashid here, temporary senator, lives in Edinburgh 500. So I don't understand why you're criticizing, but I can assure you that all over Trinidad and Tobago, anywhere, those differently abled, our people will be treated equally with fairness, love, and respect, as has always been done by the Honorable Prime Minister. We must not live in a vacuum. People have track record. People have policies that they have done, that they've created. The Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar was Prime Minister of this country from May 2010 to September 2015. In that time, she increased funding for differently abled autism grants, went up to $1,500, $2,500 per school, per student in all areas. In special needs and Paralympic sports, she increased sport funding across the board for all of our differently abled, for the Blind Cricket Association, for the deaf, for everybody across the board. She created schools and encouraged in sports camps during the summer months, as we say, or the July, August, and Easter. Over 6,000 children who are differently abled receive high-level qualified coaching and talent identification in sport. School feeding program increased for the differently abled. Opportunities will abound. And in the HDC, in the Ministry of Housing, unlike the PNM that spent some $2.8 billion and only built 4,775 houses in 9.5 years, This government will build houses and opportunity will abound for all, including the differently able. So I want you to rest assured that nobody will discriminate, nobody will treat those most in need and most vulnerable with anything other than love and respect in this side. The Honorable Senator, I always have to laugh when I say this. The Honorable Senator Vishnu Danpal, a former permanent secretary who lost his way, not understanding that permanent secretaries are to be apolitical, that they are there to protect the public purse. He boasts about his affinity to PNM back in 2008 and 2009 when he was promoting and pushing the TTRA, the policy of the PNM. And I don't understand how he can say that so freely, not understanding that public servants must be apolitical. Governments change. We are in the political arena. We delve in it and we will battle, and we like that. But a public servant, especially one as qualified and as brilliant as the Honorable Vishnu Danpal, for you to admit that while you are permanent secretary, you are PNM, that hurts me in my heart, in my soul, and that's why the country is in a mess. Because others like you also see your colleague who you worked with in the Ministry of Finance, the most powerful ministry, the Honorable Alison Lewis, as we lost government in 2015 September by spurious means, but we won't discuss that now. Apansa, she went onto the board of the PNM Port Authority. She also went on the board of Republic Bank. She also, after having advised the previous government that Nikwan and those assets of World GTL were of no good and it was a bad debt, she went on a board of Nikwan and got the assets from the PNM. This is why our country is in a mess. So I've heard the words uttered by Senator Atz and Senator Lalit Etienne. Fairness, equity, impartiality, opportunity, living out the words of the Constitution. Let me tell you, Honorable Senator Lalit Etienne, it's not Christmas decoration. It's not jokes. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, who is the Prime Minister, who selected her cabinet, her MPs, her members, her senators, she believes in that. Her policies as Prime Minister show that. The first cabinet note she ever brought was a Children's Life Fund. She continues to show that she loves people and believes in equity because she swore in on this, the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, which says in the preamble that we will respect, B, the principles of social justice, and therefore believe that the operation of the economic system should result in the material resources of the community being so distributed as to subserve the common good, that there should be adequate means of livelihood for all, and that labor should not be exploited or forced by economic necessity to operate in inhumane conditions. The Prime Minister believes this, she lives this, and her policy shows this, and this is what this budget is about. So anyone who comes to pretend that this Prime Minister is on fluff, like the PNM who came here, and every minute it's arrogance, it's gallery, it's laughing, it's dishonesty. They cannot even account for the money. The Auditor General, an independent institution, could not formulate an opinion on the PNM's accounts for 2 years straight. And they have the audacity to come here and criticize a government just incoming. And the Honorable Vishnu Danpal, who was there, who is of finance, will stand here and tell us about what he believes is going wrong and the debts and so on. Yes, you will have a great understanding because you knew better than anybody what was being obfuscated, what was being hidden from the population. We hide nothing from the population, but we will fix it. We're not afraid. We have the wherewithal. You see, the problem with the PNM is that they take their level of incompetence and cast it upon others. Let me assure you, Honorable Senator Danpal, that ministers here in the different spheres are very qualified. They've earned their position through hard work, education, discipline, punctuality, and the ability to be creative. We don't select people just because we like them or they went to the right place at the right time. We don't select people who fail in mathematics. We don't select people who take 6 subjects and fail 5 and boast about it. We have brilliance across the board. So while you can't see the diversification that will come because your shades are dark and it's colored by your colleagues who are incompetent, I can tell you the revenue streams that are going to be increased will create a difference, will create greater tax revenue, will create opportunities across the board. You sat in a government, I know you only got a Kobo sweat of a month, but before that, since 2015, sport tourism is Trinidad and Tobago. Kamala Prasad Bisesa constructed some of the greatest facilities. I don't know if you have even been. That aquatic center in the USA, there is no aquatic center like that. That center could have generated over 3.5 million US between November 25th, Thanksgiving, and January 13th, before the semester starts for spring in USA and Canada, with teams coming to train. But do you know what PNM did? Sat down. All the eggs in a dragon basket. One super minister flying back and forth to go and dance conga line, hoping to get something with a narco-terrorist drug trafficking regime, rather than developing what we have. For example, sport tourism. Do you know that your PNM government only went out in 2023 late and it didn't even come in yet for RFPs for a master plan for sport tourism? The PNM is a blight, and that's why we are here. This government is not and cannot be compared to what the PNM does. So anybody analyzing this budget presentation with a lens of the PNM is woefully inadequate, because you have to be able to walk and chew gum. The Honorable Senator Danford said that our minister does not want, or he wants to dip into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Therefore, he predicated the budget on a price that was so high that means he could dip in it. Well, one thing this Honorable Minister of 1 month, Kobo Sweat, knows about is dipping in the Heritage and Stabilization, because they dipped, whether he was here or in London or in the Ministry of Finance, them dipped like never before. The only thing they didn't have was chips and a dip. 13 times over $3 billion US. The Heritage and Stabilization in 2015 September was left by Kamala Prasad Bisesa at $7.6 billion US. After 9.5 years, it should have reached somewhere around 15 to 17 billion US. Instead, it dropped to 5 billion US, and this PNM gentleman is here with a straight face telling us that we want to dip in it. When we were in government, we put money into it. It expanded from 2.3 billion US up to 7 billion. The other thing that he would know, I'm glad, because he knows it inside out, the way to budget and the way to dip into the Heritage and Stabilization, he didn't tell the country that when his minister of grain and laugh at the population, his minister of raise price and harass everybody but himself, when they budgeted, they took the price right up to the exact number higher than they expected. They budgeted at $92 per barrel and $2.36 US per MMBTU, the exact number, knowing full well that if you budget lower, because most ministers of finance would leave a gap, would leave a little bit there so that once you go 10% above what you predicated your budget on, that money would be deposited in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. But what they did was budget so close that it can't be an increase, so they did not have to put savings for our children. PNM is anti-children, anti-savings, and anti-people of Trinidad and Tobago. The Honorable former Minister, well, the minister is 2 ministers of finance, and then one changed from finance and went in public utilities, and the first thing he could do is spend 1.3 million to outfit an office so he could feel comfortable. But that is PNM. So to tell Honorable Senator, the PNM is gone. So don't judge us by the PNM. The blight is gone. The failures are gone. The lack of diversification is gone. Those who just want to use the government to enrich themselves, they are gone. Senator Dan Paul said there's a derailment, and whether the salaries are 10%, whether it comes before or after, you know, it has to be paid. Yes, it will be paid. and it will be negotiated. And he knows full well that negotiations could go up, down, around, all around. And only his finance people, who are very bright with equations and so on, can only calculate when the actual figure has been decided. Suppose the PSA negotiates very well and gets up to 10.25%. Who knows? The starting point is 10%. So you don't come here and put a budget. Budget is not a game to play. When that is budgeted, it will be handled and it will be paid for, because Kamla Persad-Bissessar believes the resources of the country are for all and for all the workers. So there will be new revenue streams, there will be job creation. You all shut down. You sat in a government that shut down a refinery, caused negotiations. You spoke about the oil and gas, and we're being price takers. That's true, except that the way that we do it, NGC has to negotiate with the upstreamers. How come you didn't mention to the population that when your former prime ministers, one elected and one selected, went to Houston to negotiate a gas price, that immediately after that, EOG and BPTT, their revenues went up 69%. As you well know, they have to post their results in their bulletin. And if they went up 69%, what does it mean? It's a zero-sum game. So we went down 69%. So therefore, that ridiculous negotiation, the upstreamers took advantage of your former two prime ministers in Houston, who took people like you and Jerry Brooks and other intelligent people, put them aside, and then went to cut a deal. Whatever deal they made, the people of Trinidad and Tobago suffered, and NGC made a loss. So I can assure you, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, Minister of Energy, will allow those intelligent public servants who study and are very bright to negotiate on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and not some failed lawyer who went up in CIC because his daddy got him in there and he bullied Imran. That will not be happening. So we're safe. The guardrails are there. The Honorable Senator Dan Paul said, this budget will collapse. Well, I wanted to listen to him on that topic, because he is an expert in collapse. Yes, so you must listen to experts. If you have a problem, you have an aneurysm, you have to listen to the neuroscience, right, to the neurologist. So as an expert in collapse, I sat listening to this expert in collapse, because the economy collapsed under the PNM, the foreign exchange collapsed under the PNM, the job market collapsed under the PNM, safety and security in Trinidad and Tobago collapsed under the PNM, infrastructure in Trinidad and Tobago collapsed under the PNM. The PNM government and all collapsed on April 28th. Balize House now collapsed, all the contractors go on. How come it stopped? Why? Tell us why it's not going up now, where the money was coming from. So Senator Dan Paul, you also collapsed, unfortunately, as Minister of Finance. You swear in and get a Kobo sweat for a month. That could be a world record, and I like world records. In less than a month, you were out of office. I feel I'll rename you Senator Collapsing. You talk about downgrade. This, you know, sometimes I sit here and I want to know if the PNM field, everybody had no memory. If we like that movie 50 First Dates, where the girl had got in a car accident and her long-term memory was dissipated and gone, and therefore every day she began a new life. That is what the PNM believed. You were there for 9.5 years when Kamla Persad-Bissessar handed over to you, and you were the permanent secretary. The credit rating was A+. In 2015, AAA+. By 2024, you dropped it down to BBB- stable. And then with your economic policies, the thinking that the government not understanding the new policies of this government, it went down to negative, and you are saying that's UNC's fault? Let me tell you something. If you read and you know better than I do, but I'm really talking to the population out there, the ratings agencies, they give you negative, but they think that they may, if you don't make changes, they may downgrade you. However, the guardrail is on, changes made. April 28, bright people, intelligent people running, good prime minister, not arrogance, not golf course, not disappear for 27 days and go California and don't tell nobody. There is a government in charge that will make the changes requisite and get us back, climbing back up to that AAA grade rating that we had before. And I don't even know, my hand is shake when I see a document with a P&M logo on it. It's feel I had to go and do some jarre and all kind of thing. But the People's National Movement put out a statement about this budget. And it says, the media release, opposition outlines reasons for rejecting the UNC's 2026 budget. The opposition wishes to place on record its official position regarding the Appropriation Financial Year 2026 Bill 2025. The opposition voted against this budget because it represents a betrayal of the people's trust and a continuation of the UNC government's deliberate campaign of deception. It goes on to say, it burdens small businesses and protects the wealthy and politically connected. Well, I'll pause right there for a moment. It protects the wealthy and the politically connected. Let me read something for you. And when you understand that this government is going to put some burden on the wealthy, and Honorable Senator Lalit Etienne, don't believe that bullies will survive. The way you contributed, you said, well, once we tax the banks, they will pass it on. Understand you have a government here that understands how to deal with bullies, how to deal with oligopolies, how to deal with those who collude. So have no fear. We don't just do things without thinking. We have a lot of brain power in the cabinet. But let me just give you, maybe Senator Dan Paul, you could help me with this one. Because right here I'm reading about rental of properties, for example, right? And you see that we are going to equate, and we talk about equity across the board, and giving resources to everyone and giving everybody a fair share. But what if I was to tell you that there was a politically connected, let me read all your words, a politically connected landlord who rented a property to the P&M government. And when he rented this property to the P&M government, the law, Trinidad and Tobago law, the property was under residential. There was only residential approval, which means residential electricity rates, residential water rates. You should only be able to charge residential rent as opposed to the higher rents of commercial. As you would know, when you get commercial permission, or if your land moves from agricultural to residential, your land and your value asset goes up in value. What if I were to tell you that there was a politically connected landlord who rented a building to the government of which he was a part, and the government approved that and paid that landlord commercial rents for 6 years, and that landlord is yet to get change of use? What would you say about that? What would you say if the P&M government was paying taxpayers' money at commercial rates to a landlord who only had a residential building? What would you call that? Because you said that this budget is fraudulent. I suggest to you that what I am talking about is fraud. Because if you charge and you pay for something, the taxpayers' money, for something of that does not exist, you break the law, you receive excesses of money, that is criminal conduct, that is fraud. What would you say if I said that that is the situation? What if it was investigated by the authorities? And the authorities said to this politically connected landlord, well, you have to pay $3 million because residential to commercial, you have to pay. And what if I told you that that was taken to the cabinet in 2021, and on April 28, 2025, no decision had been made to tell that landlord to pay his $3 million, and he was still collecting commercial rent from a residential property? What would you say, Honorable Senator Dan Paul? Would you say it's fraud? Would you say it's fraudulent? You come here and you discuss the UNC budget as fraudulent, strong words. But I put to you that that was in your cabinet. A PNM, politically connected person. You don't know because you was only there for a month. You like to jump out, you know. You just run faster than Usain Bolt. When you're in something, you're in the whole bag. Eh? You buy the bag and the caboodle. Right? Collapsing. So, I can tell you this has been passed to the Honorable Attorney General to be passed on to the fraud squad. And if anybody wants to answer and correctly record, they can at any time they jump up, okay? Because the fraud squad will do the investigation. I'm not a police officer, but all I know is that if you collecting money under false pretenses, that is fraud. Until Senator Lalit Etienne, that is what UNC and Kamala Prasad Bissessa is against. And that's where the resources will come to be spread down to all. Because the PNM is greedy. They eat all the food on top, recuse themselves 652 times, which means taking decisions to benefit themselves, their friends, they're politically connected, then come to attack the UNC government. You all have no shame. And if anybody wants to stand up and clear the record, I am here. Senator Al-Rawi, anything to say? The next one, there was another PNM minister who went on big press conference and said, my family companies and things do business. I am a big minister and a powerful man and all kind of position, and nothing I did to enrich myself and so on, and there was no preferential treatment. You all wanted to go through this. You all must not attack people and call them fraud when all you know, when the cap fit, wear it. And I have a whole carload of cap for you today. No preferential treatment. Well, I am privileged to be in the HDC as a minister in the Ministry of Housing. And there's a certain powerful PNM, former PNM minister, senator, big boy, wanted to lead the PNM. And he said that no preferential treatment was ever given. Okay. However, I have in my hand, in June 2025, the managing director of the HDC. Now, HDC under PNM owes the Ministry of Finance, is correct, nearly $1 billion. That they don't pay the bills, but they come to tell us, probably more. We ain't finished adding up yet, but close to $1 billion. We owed goods and service providers to the tune of $77,962,906 in June of 2025. This is about hundreds of contractors who are owed. But somehow, the managing director, who's very close to some of the senators sitting down here, we could say one word broke and all of that, very close, decided to do a lot of work, went through these documents to select who would get paid and who would not get paid. Now remember, we are run by this constitution. If everybody is owed money, then everybody has the same right to be paid, and it should be based on a policy. Whether it is length of age debts, who's owed longer, who's owed more, whatever, a fair, opaque policy. But this HDC director, J.L. McFarlane, came and presented to the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Housing. She wanted to pay out money, not the full $72,962,906, but she wanted to pay out a portion of money, 31 million or so. And when this document was presented, when going through it, we saw companies like PCAL Services Limited, 6,367,000, Rivulet Investments, 2,800,000. Whoever know these companies, just whistle, you know. Just whistle. Because you all come here in this parliament and play sanctimonious. Sure serve. If anybody family connected to that, whistle 2.04 million, a total of 11.2 million out of 20 million for these companies connected to one PNM former minister. But they say it's no special treatment. Isn't that special treatment? What's the policy? And when you look at the documents, I cannot show it on Vice President, but I mean, when you look at it, you get nervous and shake. When you see the kind of thing, it's just all yellow, it's just the minister company and them, the family companies, right? Or this managing director took all the citizens that are owed all that money and somehow just selected that of a PNM minister to pay out $11 million like that. Is that preferential treatment? Is that equity? Is that fairness? Is that working with all those most in need? Is that helping the differently able? Or is that self-serving? That's what the PNM is. Corrupt to the core. And then we add on that, and it goes on and on. You know, I could go on, but that going by the Attorney General too and to the fraud squad. But I don't have time to go through all the PNM corruption. But then they talk also about CPEP, and they cry for the workers of CPEP. Imagine a man, a former minister, a former Attorney General, get up on a platform in public and say he wants his children to cut grass. Ooh. He wants his children to cut grass. Well, I could tell you I have 3 children, and if they have to cut grass because that's the best they could do, well, so be it. I will go there and carry them a bottle of water and watch them cut the grass. But never one day did I dream about my 2 daughters or my son going out in the hot sun to cut grass for a living. I really didn't. I dreamt about them being attorneys. One is attorney. I dreamt of them being professors and businessmen and academics, you know, and I worked sports heroes. I worked towards that. But a man who made $145 million while he was sworn to be a government minister is telling poor people and the differently able that he wants his children to cut grass. Well, take all the money you made from the PNM government and give it to people who cut in grass. Because the 10,000 workers that they claim is workers with CPEP and URP. Out of the $1.4 billion that some minister went and tell some chairman that the cabinet had approved, but the cabinet did not approve, and the board members were duped into approving on the day of the election, April 28, $1.4 billion for contractors of CPEP. Not for workers, contractors. And here's who some of the contractors. Ask the mayor of Point 14, the PNM. He's the mayor who in charge of keeping the place clean, picking up garbage, cutting bush. But he have a $2 million CPEP contract. That is PNM. Those days are gone. The guardrail is here. Another just come one from downstairs. You talk about equity. Equity and merit has returned with the UNC. If you're bright, you're bright. If your children bright, you're bright. Get what you deserve. But you have an MP from the PNM downstairs who only got into law school with some B's. All other children could not get in. But somehow some PNM plan, he get in. But on top of getting in, he had $2.7 million with his family in CPEP contract too. So he's a CPEP lawyer and a CPEP contractor. But it didn't done there, you know. It didn't done there. Over the last few months, I ain't gonna lie, I don't cry easy, and my daughter just get married, and I didn't cry because she's lucky she get a good man to marry. Better than I could ever be. So I was happy with that. But I have nearly cried meeting people at housing. Women, single mothers, poverty, 4, 5 children, thousands of people. I've met at least 850 people coming, begging, thinking minister could give them a house, reference number and so on. Full families. You know what the PNM did other than not build house? In 9.5 years, they built 4,775 houses, right? You know what they did? They gave the same CPEP MP, the same couldn't get into law school MP. That wasn't enough for one person. You know what they did? They gave him a HCC house too. He had no wife, he had no family. Me and him know if you'd ever have a wife, So ask Kareem Marcel if this is what being in government is about. The PNM is gone because the PNM is corrupt. So imagine the PNM, we're talking about Edinburgh, 500 and differently able. Yes, people will get houses and people will be loved and respected and given an opportunity to uplift themselves. Not this PNM disgrace. So not only he get squeezed in law school where he didn't deserve to be, so he could earn money, his CPEP contractor cut grass now too, and then get a house while single mothers and families are begging for housing. That is PNM, and the PNM is gone and shall never return. God will not do Trinidad and Tobago that. And our next one, Guardsman, PNM, campaign manager, San Fernando West. Yes, look at this. All kind of ghost bills. This going by the Attorney General too for Guardsman. That is San Fernando West, right? And finally,
Minister,
time up?
Time up.
Okay. Well, the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez gear away today because I was going there too. I go do that on doubles and coffee. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President. All your PNM talk now. Bless.